Well, it's been a rough ride, but we finally reached the tail end of the Miller era. And not only that, but we are ending with the best season of a bad era. Why is season 16 the best of the era, you may ask? Well, you'll find out at the end of the video. Also, for this ranking, I have brought back the original format of the tier list because there are actually a few episodes that break the 8 out of 10 bar for me personally. Without wasting any more time, let's begin the ranking. Race to the Rescue was a pretty good start to the season. Flynn isn't as stupid as he was in Fiery Flynn. There are a lot of cool angles at the opening, and I like how Birdie and Butch get some time to shine here. I personally view this as the most overhated episode of the show. I have this episode in the good tier. Ol' Weezy Wobbles is a pretty boring episode. Thomas is a jerk, and Ol' Weezy being broken makes absolutely no sense. Bad tier. Express coming through is another bad episode. How is the Express too heavy for Thomas if he pulled it before in Thomas's train with seemingly no issue? It would be one thing if there were more than 4 coaches in the episode, but no, there's only 5 coaches, which is only 1 more than 4. The ending sucks as well. This episode would work a lot better if it had an engine that hasn't pulled the Express before, like Rosie, Percy, or Charlie, someone that isn't actually capable of pulling the Express. This episode goes in the bad tier. Percy and the Monster of Brendan is a poor attempt at a spooky episode. Everyone is out of character and the ending sucks. I place it in the okay tier. Ho Ho Snowman is decent. I do like how Charlie got the lead role, and I do like the supposed message here, but Henry's characterization and the fact that Charlie was able to hide from him brings it down for me. I place it in the okay tier. Flashbang Wallop is another boring Thomas episode. What makes it even worse is that he just gets what he wants at the end of the episode. Bad tier. Thomas and the Rubbish Train is another boring Thomas episode. Poor tier. Thomas Toots the Crows is another dumb Thomas episode, but I actually kind of enjoyed this one. At least Thomas is trying to do a good thing for someone else, and the episode does have some funny moments. I place it in the okay tier. Bust My Buffers is another pretty good episode. It thankfully doesn't suffer from the repetitive formula that was used in the previous seasons, and Gordon is very much in character. I place this in the good tier. Percy and the Calliope is my favorite episode of the whole era. This episode reminds me of certain episodes from the classic series with an engine making something old look new again, and I don't think Percy was too stupid here. I place this in the favorites tier. Thomas and the Sounds of Sodor is another boring Thomas episode. Poor tier. Salty Surprise is alright. I do like that we get flashbacks to Salty's past, though I do wish that Edward and Salty's roles were swapped. I put this in the okay tier. Sodor Surprise Day is atrocious. Thomas is stupid here, the scene at the docks is horrible, and the ending sucks. This episode goes in the bad tier. Emily's Winter Party Special is another bad episode. The story is literally just keeping up with James, but with Emily and elements from Top Off Thomas mixed into it. I also don't like Emily here. She's so selfish and inconsiderate. This goes in the bad tier. Muddy Matters is another dumb episode. I don't really have much to say about this episode, so it goes in the poor tier. Whiff Swish is a combination of Dream On, Duncan Does It All, and a bit of Emily's rubbish. I do like that Whiff got the lead role, but the episode itself is really boring and goes in the poor tier. Welcome Stafford is another good episode. Spencer gets the lead role again and is perfectly in character. And I do like Stafford. He has a cool design and I like some of this dialogue in this episode. This episode also acknowledges how long Stafford can go before his battery runs down, something that was forgotten about in the next season. I place this episode in the good tier. The Christmas Tree Express is the worst episode of the whole Miller era. I hate how Toby is scared of Misty Island even after being there twice with no issue, and I hate how Rheneas is so bossy and takes no consideration to Toby's feelings. There are other bad episodes in this era, but something tells me that this episode is the era's worst, just for what it did to Toby and Rheneas, both of my favorite characters of the entire franchise. This episode goes in the bad tier. Don't Bother Victor is a great episode. Even though this episode does steal the plot from Sirhando in Charge, I do kinda prefer this episode. At least in this episode, Peter Sam's decisions aren't because of his ego, but because he was doing what he was told. It is also nice to see Victor in a setting outside the Steamworks. I put this in the favorites tier. Out of all the Miller era episodes, Happy Birthday Sir feels the most like a Brenner era episode. The flashback with Edward in the carriage was great, and Thomas for once was closest to his classic series persona. This episode does have a few issues, but they're mostly just nitpicks, and it's overall a great way to end off the Miller era. I placed this in the favorites tier. If I was making this video a couple years ago, I would have said that season 16 was the best season of the CGI series. But looking back on the season now, I have no idea what I was thinking. I mean, the season isn't bad, but it's not that great. I'll start off with the positives first. First of all, the animation is impressive, but I think that can be said for all the Miller seasons. Though for this season, there are a lot more unique shots than the previous seasons. The trains are also longer, and they've started adding brake vans more often. Sodor is starting to feel like a real place again, at least from an animation standpoint. Secondly, the rhyming and alliteration has been cut down by a lot. They are now mostly said by the narrator and not by the characters. Now, that is a massive positive. I think we are all getting sick of the rhyming throughout every episode. Thirdly, this season was very self-aware. Whenever something dumb or repetitive happens, sometimes a character would have a line or a reaction to something that sums up how the audience feels.
But sir, I am Gordon and I pull the express. I know who you are, Gordon.
I'm afraid my battery's running out again, Spencer. Spencer! Oh dear. Here we go again.
Sorry, Den. I'm chasing crows for Farmer McCall.
Chasing crows.
Spencer! Spencer! Oh, never mind, Spencer.
What are you doing here, James? The quarry is closed.
Hello, Mavis. I'm chasing crows for Farmer McCall. I must go. Goodbye, Mavis.
Goodbye, Thomas.
No, Rheneas. We mustn't bother Victor with little things.
It's like the writers are finally aware of the repetitive formula they've been using since season 12. And finally, the narrow gauge engines. I don't think I need to explain this one. Now, as good as this season's positives are, there are also some things I dislike about this season. I think the biggest problem with this season is that most of the episodes reuse plots or dialogue from previous episodes from other seasons. Sometimes they did this twice, and sometimes they did this 3 times. So much so, I even made a whole video on the amount of times this happened, which is sadly blocked now, but can still be viewed on my Odyssey account. This unfortunately shows how lazy the writing team has become, and I think this season does this the most times out of any season. Overall, this season isn't good, but it is a step up from the previous 5 seasons, especially season 15. I placed this season in the decent tier, and that wraps up the Miller era. The next video will be a top 10 episodes from the Miller era. Stay tuned for that. Until next time.